Proud of your boy! Proud of your boy! Proud of your boy!
Yeah, just for awareness, be advised, there's probably about 300 Proud Boys. They're marching eastbound in this 400 block of kind of Independence, actually on the mall towards the United States Capitol.
I am not allowed to say what's going to happen today because everyone's just going to have to watch for themselves. But it's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
Who's streets? Our streets! Who's streets? Our streets! Who's streets? Our streets!
Don't hit you, hurt you.
We are on your side! Don't make us go against you! Inside! These are our streets!
$20 a picture.
I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. Because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. All Vice President Pence has to do is send it back to the states to recertify. And we become president, and you are the happiest people. Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Cruiser 50, it does look like we're going to have an ad hoc march stepping off here. There's a crowd surge heading east.
We love Trump! 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 We love Trump!
Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
Priority. We just had protests. T circle, breach the line. We need backup.
Madam Speaker, the Vice President and the United States Senate.
We're going to give riot warnings as soon as the outright is here. We're going to give riot warnings. We're going to try and get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
49 hours declaring it a riot.
Cruiser 5 to 50, be advised. Capitol Police 1 advised they're trying to breach and get into the Capitol. 50, I copy.
We're about 5 miles out. We're trying to make our way through all this.
We have a breach of the Capitol! Breach of the Capitol to the upper level!
Jack, be advised they're requesting additional resources on the east side as they've broken into that window and they're trying to kick it in.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
Mike Pence have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. The U.S. demands the truth. Bring out facts. Bring out facts. Bring out facts.
We're gonna get too many people. Look at this vantage point, man.
We need an area for these housing members. They're all walking over now through the tunnels. We're trying to hold the upper deck. We're trying to hold the upper deck now. We need to hold the doors of the Capitol. I need court support. We lost the line! We lost the line! All MPDs pull back! All MPDs pull back up to the upper deck! All MPDs pull back to the upper deck! ASAP!
Cruiser 50, be advised that Capitol Police is going to start moving their resources inside. They're going to start the M4 officers first.
H208 with 4 members. The door's barricaded. There's people flooded the hallways outside. We have no way out.
Advance officers still remaining on the house floor, on the third floor, to use the subways themselves. It's time to evacuate so we can secure the members on the other side. Copy.
It's up to us people now, the American people. What are you ready to do? One more time. What are you ready to do? And whatever it takes, I'll lay my life down if it takes.
Absolutely. That's why we showed up today.
Bring her out here!
Hey, boys,
We're coming in if you don't bring her out!
back up!
You son of a bitch! You back up!
I have myself on back.
need some staging to send to that West Terrace door for backup.
Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are being lauded as courageous heroes. And while I agree with that notion, Why? Because they told the truth? Why is telling the truth hard? I guess in this America, it is. Us 4 officers, we would do January 6th all over again. We wouldn't stay home because we knew it was going to happen. We would show up. That's courageous. That's heroic. So what I ask from you all is to get to the bottom of what happened. And that includes, like, I echo the sentiments of all of the other officers sitting here. I use an analogy to describe what I want as a hitman. If a hitman is hired and he kills somebody, the hitman goes to jail. But not only does the hitman go to jail, but the person who hired them does. There was an attack carried out on January 6th, and a hitman sent them. I want you to get to the bottom of that.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they have. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
He was telling me that his race was diminishing. This is in 1982. He said that if something is not done about it, in the year 2042, the white race will lose ground. They will no longer be the majority. So I was hearing about 2042 back in 1982. And he told me a lot of lies. But the thing about 2042 was true. And I've been following it. And when like I said, I'm 66. When I was a kid, the Black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans, 1%. Latino, Hispanic Americans, almost 2%. And Asian Pacific Americans, almost 3%. Whites were like 86, 87%. Every year, all you have to do is go to uscensus.gov. The census is taken every decade, and you can see the trends, right? Today, Black people remain around 12%, 12.9. So they say 13%. We haven't really grown. Native Americans are almost at 2% now from 1%. So they haven't grown. Asian Americans are now almost at 6%. So they've almost doubled from their 3%. Latino Hispanic Americans are 17 point something percent, almost 18% here in this country now. So if you take, oh, and by the way, in 2020, which was when the last census was taken, white people are 59% today, all right? So you take just 12% Black, 17% Latino, that right there is 29% non-white. This is happening, all right? When I first started doing this stuff 40 some years ago, there was the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazi Party, and what they called white power skinheads. That was it, right? Today you got the Klan, the Nazis, the white power skinheads, the 1%ers, the 3%ers, the Proud Boys, the National Alliance, the Vanguard, on and on and on, all these groups. And they're all saying, come join us, we're gonna take our country back, you know? And what they tell me is, Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation. And they're freaking out. So they, how old are you, Ty?
27.
27? Are you familiar with the term white flight?
I've heard it. I can't remember what it means. I remember it from back in Antifa days, but.
Right, okay, well, white flight barely exists anymore, okay? White flight, back in the day, you had white neighborhoods, and Blacks and Jews were not allowed to move into those neighborhoods. And they had covenant in these homes. If a white person buys a house, he signs a covenant that if he moves, he will not sell the house to a Black or a Jew. There were restricted neighborhoods, areas. So eventually all that had to go. And people were allowed to move into whatever neighborhood they wanted. Well, when Blacks or Jews started moving into these neighborhoods, white people would move out and move into another neighborhood. That's called another white neighborhood. That's called white flight. Every time Blacks would come, they fly out, all right? So white flight today barely exists because the color of the American landscape has changed so much that anywhere you and I go, there's already somebody there who doesn't look like us, right? So these people are feeling that they're getting squeezed out. In their mind, they're the patriots. You know, we discovered this country, we built this country, we wrote the Constitution, and now people are coming in here who don't look like us and squeezing out our identity. So, you know, that's why you got all these groups saying, come join us, you know, we're gonna take our country back. And so some of these people, out of fear of losing their identity, run and join these groups. But when the group does not take the country back as quickly as they would like it to, some of them get antsy and say, you know what, if the Klan can't do it or the whoever can't do it, I'll do it myself. And that's when they walk into the Black church in Charleston, South Carolina, and boom, boom, boom. Or the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, or the Buffalo grocery store, or the Walmart in El Paso, or the
Christchurch, New Zealand. Because I collect and read manifestos actually, which I know sounds morbid as hell, but how are you going to understand evil if you don't go straight to the source?
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's the thing we got to do. We got to try to understand that mentality, man. You know, and see, this is why I'm so against banning books, regardless of what the book is, whether it's Turner Diaries or whether it's the biography of Martin Luther King Jr. Read everything you can get your hands on. You know,
absolutely.
So anyway, they run and join these groups, and when the group doesn't take the country back, you know, they go out and try to do it themselves. And every time they get caught or shot and killed, and law enforcement goes and raids their property, what do they find? They find a cache of automatic weapons that are being stored for what they call RAHOA. You know the term RAHOA?
That's actually a term I haven't heard. I've always heard like Day of the Rope, Day of Judgment, shit like that, but
right. Day of the Rope,
that's a new one to me.
Right. Well, RAHOA, RAHOWA, is a white supremacist term for the race war, RAHOWA, which are the first two letters of three words, racial holy war, RAHOWA. And they also call it the Boogaloo, as opposed to the 1960s music dance, the Boogaloo.
Right.
But yeah, RAHOWA or the Boogaloo. And so, and even that term, take our country back, is a dog whistle. That term was originally a Klan term from 1954, when Brown versus the Board of Education in the Supreme Court desegregated schools. And you can find footage of Klan rallies where you have some Grand Dragon or Imperial Wizard standing behind a microphone and some flaming cross behind him. He's saying, I'm not gonna let my little white boys and girls go to school, little niggers. We're gonna take our country back, meaning back to segregation. And that became the mantra, that became the slogan, take our country back, all right? So that's 1954. Fast forward to 2009, a new political party had been born, and it was called the Tea Party. And they were using that same slogan, take our country back. So they had a rally down on the Capitol, nothing like January 6th, very peaceful rally. And I went down there, and because I'm only 35 minutes from the Capitol, US Capitol. I go down there, they're all on the steps with their take our country back, take back our country signs. And I said to them, I said, why are you using a KKK slogan? Oh, no, sir, we don't mean it like that. You are aware that it's a Klan slogan, right? Yeah, but that was way back when. We mean it something totally different. I said, but you're leaving it open-ended. You're saying take our country back, but you're not saying take it back to what? Take it back from who? Well, sir, what we mean is this. We're going to take our country back from the Democrats, take it back to Republican rule. I said, okay, why don't you say that? That way you close it off. There's no misinterpretation as to what you mean. Well, sir, that's what we mean. I said, well, I understand that, but I still have a problem. President Jimmy Carter was a Democrat. President Bill Clinton was a Democrat. Where were you then when they were in office screaming, take our country back? You weren't out there. Now you got a black guy in the White House and you're screaming, take our country back. What am I supposed to think? Oh, well, sir, we told you what we meant, and then they walked away from me. So I knew exactly what they meant, right? And if you saw President Trump come out right before the insurrection and address his followers, what did he say? He said, we're all going to march down to the Capitol. I'll be right there with you, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, quote unquote, "You will never take back our country with weakness. You must show strength." Those are his exact, I'm quoting him. Got it on video. And that's exactly what they did. They marched down there. They did not show weakness. They showed strength to take their country back. You got people walking through the Capitol Rotunda carrying the Confederate battle flag. Also a guy in a Camp Auschwitz t-shirt. You don't have to ask them what they want. That's what they want to go back to. And, you know, it's very disturbing, very disturbing. And I fault a lot of it on our educational system. Because people, you know, I'm not faulting so much putting the fault on these people. They've been led down, you know, the wrong path. Some of them do know better, but many of them don't because they've not been educated properly. If you go to high school in the North, you were taught the Civil War was fought over slavery. And yes, that is correct. It was fought over slavery. If you go to high school in the South, you're taught, no. The Civil War was fought over states' rights. And yeah,
well, thankfully, that wasn't my experience. Thankfully, we touched on the slavery subject. That's basically all we touched on the Civil War, really, to the point where it was kind of like...
You're way out in the West Coast.
Oh, no, I only moved here 8 years ago. So I'm actually from Texas. I was raised in Odessa, and then high school, I would have been down in South Texas, actually, so a little closer to the border. But the thing with it being down in South Texas, actually, is it's a large Mexican and Black majority. So there actually is like very small chunk of white people. So at least from my experience, thankfully, that was something that was heavily touched on. But there were other school districts, I will say, at the time that I know were pushing that aside or tossing it out the window or, you know, book banning.
Right.
Can I maybe offer, or I'm not cutting you off, am I? I wanted to, okay. So this is my perspective of January 6th. And I think we both have different perspectives of it, but I just want to get to the right part. So in anything that I say, I'm not trying to wash over white supremacy. I recognize that there are white supremacists at January 6th, that there were elements within its ranks. So this was how January 6th went for me. The day before January 6th, my feed was littered with these supposed flyers from the right, and it was saying, prepare for a day of chaos, prepare for a day of rage. And I set alarms for, I don't remember what time it was that day, but by the time I woke up and it said Jan 6 on my alarm, I turned on my TV, and immediately they were trying to break down the doors. Like, that was the first thing I saw. So it had already popped off, and I was like, holy shit, it's actually happening. I think I had about 7 different screens, phones, computers, tabs, anything that I had a different angle of January 6th, and I was watching it all fucking day, pacing back and forth like I was in the Batcave or something. And I saw a lot of the obscurities that happened. I saw the cops letting people through, opening the doors, the gates. The more the stories went on, it turned out that they disabled the security cameras, that they were offering tours. I don't believe that January 6th was a far-right insurrection. I believe that there were far-right insurrectionists within its ranks. I believe that equating it to an insurrection is like equating the Portland rioters setting the federal courthouse on fire to an insurrection. I believe that in terms of an insurrection, you need to go after military targets. It's not as simple as going into the Capitol and planting your flag. And I get that there's a symbolic gesture behind it to where if something like that were achieved, it'd be an activation. But the more that seems to come out with January 6th, it just seems to have the deep state and, quite frankly, a lot of Democrats all over it. And there's footage from the police crowd where they're like, yeah, we have undercovers dressed as Antifa. Look out for the colored nozzles on the end of their guns. You'll know that's one of ours. Look out for certain tags and markings. They had people pretending to be Antifa. They had people pretending to be the far right. I think what happened after the assassination of JFK is it was a coup. I think that we are under a new form of power. I don't think that the traditional America we all like to think we live in has been my reality. I think that right now, especially with COVID, it feels like all the rights are being transferred to globalists or the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization, who's putting out a treaty that I'm pretty sure just got signed that says, any nation that signs with us, we're going to dictate medical policy, or if it has to do with shootings, climate change, we're going to dictate how you operate that from now on. It's out of your hands. So protesting your local government for changes in policy, it won't matter anymore because the World Health Organization is an international body. Simultaneously, that year, the next year, the following, even before, you have coups happening all over the world. It just happened to be the season of coups. And the more that comes out, and especially with my experience of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they wanted there to be some sort of battle in DC. They technically got it with May 29th because Antifa went to DC first and set the White House lawn on fire and set Trump to the bunker. And the more that comes out with that, there was a lot of dark shit that went down, and the media did a lot of lying in regards to that in an effort to slam Trump. Whether you think he's good or bad, it's, in my view, it's kind of like go after him for things that are legit. Otherwise, you just discredit all the wrong things that he actually does do that need attention. But it seems like January 6th was the ultimate flashpoint where they used our little faux civil war. They used our LARPing and fighting in the streets. They finally got everybody together on that day and fighting. And now we're seeing all these expansionary government powers to where it's not that they want to crack down on the far right. It's that they want to crack down on everybody. And then you look into a lot of the Black Lives Matter riots and rallies. There were police, there were federal infiltrators, and yeah, 100%. And especially now with a lot of people coming across the border, I think that we have foreign agents that are, especially with the colleges, that we're seeing a lot of that being introduced. And it is kind of a white supremacist worst nightmare, but to see it at the highest levels being orchestrated in a way kind of like the Turner Diaries, to where it takes something like that, which should just seem like a crazy Nazi fan fiction, and makes it seem more like prophecy. And there's far right conservative elements in the government that I believe are pushing it as well, but there's different forms of accelerationist operating at the same point, to where even during the rallies here, there was a website called Stormfront, and you could go listen to Nazis talking, and they would laugh. Oh God. Yeah, like it's rough, but I mean, if you want to hear what the other side's saying, but they were laughing, and they're just like, guys, don't even go out tomorrow. Don't even go out the next day. Stay your asses at home and watch the show. And everything that happened was self-inflicted damage. But in that chaos, like here in Eugene, it's a communist hellhole. People are in the streets. The gender madness, LGBT madness has gotten to the point where people are identifying as non-human entities as itself. People are shitting in the streets. There's fentanyl out the ass. Kids are dropping out of school. And there's hammers and sickles spray painted everywhere, and murals, and Black Lives Matter, and Free Palestine. And I live in a neighborhood that I'm surrounded by white supremacists right now. They probably don't feel too comfortable going into town and seeing that constantly. It's like we have all these accelerationist efforts coming in at once, but I really feel like January 6th was entrapment for a lot of Americans, and that they used the Nazis in those ranks, and they used the Antifa supporters that they had come to the Capitol, and they cracked down on a lot of innocent people. The QAnon shaman, they painted him out to be some devils. Have you ever listened to any of the interviews with, I can't remember his name, but the QAnon shaman?
I know who he is, but no, I've not heard any interviews.
So he does a fantastic interview with Michael Malice, who's an anarchist, and he has a really great show. He's friends with Joe Rogan and Lex Fridman and all of them. The QAnon shaman is probably one of the most sane human individuals I've ever heard from in my entire life. And there was no white supremacy. I do wonder about the black sun element, the black sun on his arm, but part of me wonders if that's like the swastika and it's kind of like a reclaiming, because I do know people who do that here, even on the far left, because they want to try and take it back. But I really think you should listen to his testimony. I think he was even running for like congressman or senator or something down in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. But
send me a link to some of his stuff.
100%, because the more I listen to people on the ground and the more the footage comes out, it's like this feels like January 6th was an effort to demonize the government's political targets as terrorists, no matter whether they're far right or far left. And there seems to have been a communist agenda at play that's dumbed down the education system, that now what once created loyal factory workers creates revolutionary dropouts and junkies. And it's the system, it seems like it was designed to be broken, but it was designed to be broken in a way to where we were presented with this mess, to where we're just all constantly finger pointing at each other. And I think that I just want to put that out there. I think that January 6th, and even groups like the Proud Boys and the 3%ers, there's other problems that I have with a lot of the other ones. The more time goes on, I do really question. I don't think that this was a white supremacist driven plot. I think that they were there. And everything you mentioned too with white supremacy at the Capitol, Those are all the same faults that Antifa has, putting out mantras that are left way too broad, that are way too easily to be interpreted. So they put out a message that sounds good and fluffy and short, but then the communists come in and then they take it over. Because the more the Black Lives Matter rallies went on, the more and more the black people filtered out, the more and more the same people filtered out, the Occupy Wall Street people filtered out, and the more the communists came in, the more I saw that goddamn hammer and sickle. And it seems like our government is facilitating this race war, be it by those who are ideologically driven to do so or those who just want to do it to turn a profit. But it seems like the white supremacists were right in a lot of ways, that these they know what makes these people tick. The government knows what makes white supremacy tick more than the average American. So the average American wouldn't think about these types of things or to understand the ideology. But it just makes so much sense why they're freaking out with the order of events. And
no, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think every person who came to the Capitol was a white supremacist by any means. But yes, there were a number of them there who were driven by fear of being erased. Why else would you come out with a Civil War battle flag or a Camp Auschwitz T-shirt and blame everything on the blacks or on the Jews or people coming across the border? Hell, they came across the border themselves, generations ago. Same type of deal. And I think, there is a lot of misinformation. There are a lot of provocateurs that are in there to cause things to flare up and things like that. What's the old saying? Divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
So got people fighting amongst themselves. It makes it easier for you to come in and take over.
Yeah, and then to receive funding too, because Capitol Police, after being involved with that, after being caught on camera facilitating that, they got millions of dollars. And they got more equipment, and not only that, but then they got the power to surveil people. Like, if they wanted to question me for questioning this, they could send a representative to my door all the way from DC. Like, that's the rights that they were given in that moment.
Well, I can tell you, I did not know the chief of police at the Capitol, Capitol chief of police, during the January 6th thing. Apparently, he had to resign or whatever else. I did not know him, and there were a lot of problems there or whatever. But the new guy, the one that they have there now, I know him very, very well, very well. And he's a good friend of mine. His name is Chief Thomas Manger. And he was the chief of police here where I live. And I would meet with him the third Thursday of every month. If I was in town, not on tour or whatever else, I would meet with him. And he is a no-nonsense person. He is very level-headed and a very, very fair person. I'm not a big fan of a lot of police people. I've even helped get rid of police chiefs and get rid of police officers here where I live because of their racism or their corruption. But I can tell you, this guy is a stand-up guy. And, he won't put up with any nonsense, and he'll give people as much freedom as the law allows for.
See, and that's good to hear. But I think what concerns me in the modern moment is even good people get taken advantage of. Like, one of the clips that came out from January 6th that scared the hell out of me was there was a black officer there, and he throws down his fucking shit as everybody's charging past him. And he's like, they sold us out. He's like, they fucking sold us out. He's like, they put us out here for this to happen. They staged this, essentially. And I think that can happen to anybody right now. Anybody in that position. That's what scares me, not necessarily the integrity of the individuals. Well, the integrity of the individuals in a lot of institutions are very questionable right now, to be sure. But even the good ones especially, are targets. And that's what scares me, because I do want to see a sound system in the United States where we can feel comfortable with policing, where I've learned we need police. I have called the police a couple of times since I've left Antifa and said, fuck you, you all deserve to burn to the ground. Like, it turns out they're pretty essential. But I worry about the government, because the cops are the victims in this as much as any of the protesters, because the cops were put into this situation too. We all have the same people at the top that really far right, far left, and then the police. We were just kind of pawns being moved around. And
So what was your take on when Black Lives Matter first came out?
I thought it was inspirational. I think I fooled myself a lot at the time because I had myself fooled that it was all about fighting for African American freedom and police brutality. But really, I had a lot of reservations about the government prior. I lived in an area when Operation Jade Helm was going down in Texas, where they were listing U.S. states as hostile territories. All the red states from the 2012 map were listed as hostile, and they sent military into our towns, and that's when a lot of police militarization was happening simultaneously. So, I kind of say Black Lives Matter wasn't ever really about Black people. It was just about jumping on the opportunity to act. But I had positive feelings about it in the beginning.
Well, I'll give you my take. Well, first it was born out of the murder of Trayvon Martin back in 2013, and the founders of that movement, they did not, they co-opted the idea basically from Martin Luther King when he had created the Montgomery bus boycott when Rosa Parks got arrested for not giving up her seat to a white person. All right, Rosa Parks was not the first Black woman who refused to give up her seat. There have been many others, but they did not make the news in Montgomery, Alabama. That was not national news. So Martin Luther King had the idea of, we need to put this bus situation down here in Montgomery in the spotlight. So in the national spotlight, so everybody can see what's going on. Put it in a fishbowl so everybody can look in, and maybe that pressure will cause them to change their law, because it was a law that Black person had to give up the right to their seat. Now, it was a great idea what he did, to put it in the national spotlight, because it worked. He did that boycott for a year. Everybody was seeing it, and the pressure was put on the Montgomery bus company, Montgomery, Alabama, and they changed their law. And then guess what? It had a ripple effect. All the other southern states who had the same law said, you know what? We better change ours too. Otherwise, King's gonna come here and start all this stuff. So it rippled, and all these states changed their laws. So that's where Black Lives Matter got the idea. They wanted to put the national spotlight on the plight of young Black men who, for lack of a better term, were being murdered by white police officers for holding their cell phone, holding their wallet, getting shot in the back, whatever. Some were guilty, some were not guilty. All right, but it was happening more so where Black guys in that situation went to their grave. White guys in that situation either went to jail or went home. So put the national spotlight on that and show that disparity. So it was a good idea, I thought. But where I think they got off track, they did not want to trademark the name Black Lives Matter. They did not want to centralize it. They wanted it to be organic, right? So unlike, say, the NAACP or the Red Cross or the Boy Scouts of America, these are all centralized organizations where you have one president, you have a headquarters, policy is created in headquarters and disseminated to all the chapters around the country. Black Lives Matter does not have chapters, they have factions. Faction has no centralization. And so you got 90 different factions of Black Lives Matter all over the country. Some are very aggressive. Some are laid back. Some are full of Black supremacists. Some are Blacks and whites working together. Some factions are more whites in there than Black people. Some want to sit down with the city or county legislature and draw up bills to do this or do that, to remove a statue, take down a flag or whatever. Others just want to go rip it down and spray paint BLM all over the place. Okay, so what happens is the media does not differentiate, say, okay, let's say, Black Lives Matter in Eugene wants to, go out and rip down a statue and destroy stuff. And then Black Lives Matter in Portland wants to sit down with the city legislature and draw up bills and laws to make things happen. All right. When something bad happens, the media says Black Lives Matter did this. They don't say the Eugene faction of Black Lives Matter. They just say Black Lives Matter. So paints it with a broad brush. So it hurts the people who are trying to do the right thing. And, it's just like, today, the Klan, I'm not saying the Klan's doing anything good, but the Klan is fractured as well. There is no more the Ku Klux Klan. there are splinter clans all over the place, and they don't get along with each other most of the time. And so you have a lot of Black Lives Matter factions that don't get along with one another. There are some that rip me a new ass. You know, they don't like me, want nothing to do with me, etc. I'm a sellout, etc. But there have been at least 6 who have contacted me and said, hey, you give workshops, you know, can you teach us how to do what you do? So they're all over the map.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is the more communistic element of it. You know, the new Black Lives Matter is definitely communist. I mean, they've kind of said themselves that we're well-trained Marxists, and that's got to be open for everybody, so less centralized, which I think is also largely what's causing damage. But what's the point I was gonna make? Sorry, I had it, then I lost it. One moment. Oh yeah, no. Yeah, well, along with the communist angle, you're talking about how Black Lives Matter wanted to put the spotlight on the black kids with the cell phones getting shot and all these isolated incidents. There was a really great interview with the son of the Hamas founder that Jordan Peterson did recently, and he was describing the Intifada and events that had led to a lot of the struggles in Israel and the West Bank. And, you know, he describes stone throwing, and the purpose of the kids going out and acting out and attacking the IDF for the patrolling soldiers was basically to get them riled up. And anytime any of the kids got shot or gunned down or anything like that, then it became a national story. Then it became, and this is from his mouth, not mine, but it became basically, look at this poor dead Palestinian child, look at the evil murdering Israelis. And the more they were able to operate kind of under that framework and push that message out, well, what were the rest of us in the West doing? Holy shit, Israel's gunning down Palestinian kids. Holy shit, another one, more dead people, more dead kids, which was happening and wasn't good. But essentially, the Intifada and having kids throw stones and behave in that matter and to get involved in riots and protests was to get that media coverage, to isolate those events, and then basically to put it out to the rest of everybody kind of as a global rallying cry. And I kind of feel like that's what's going on with Antifa, and now especially with it mixing in with the jihadist elements, it's like, oh, you two are meant for each other at this point, because they make statements back and forth.
A lot of that is used for propaganda to recruit and you know, affect people's beliefs. Like, for example, Matt Cole. All right, when I met with him, you know, 8 years after he came to my high school, and I had that conversation with him on the sidewalk across the street from the White House. All right, like I said, nobody knew they were having this. I found out through different channels, so there were no police there, nobody, because people just walking by not knowing that, you know, these were Nazis. Well, about 4 months later, they had their national American Nazi Party recruitment rally over there. And so that had been announced 4 months in advance. People came in droves to protest. You know, they wrote letters to the DC Police Department, don't give them a permit, blah, blah, blah. Well, you have to give them a permit. You know, they have a right to march, they have a right to freedom of assembly, whether we like it or not, right? So people came from New York, from Baltimore, from Philadelphia, Richmond. They came with baseball bats, bricks, chains, bottles, you name it. I was there. I was there in person watching this. All right. And it was nothing but a full-blown riot. And what the police did was they had all these Nazis coming from around the country, and it ended up being about 50 of them. In the next county over, they charted at some undisclosed location. They all reported there. The police put them all on a bus and escorted them into DC. That way they wouldn't be all coming in different cars and causing havoc all over the place. All right. Put them on a bus, brought them into DC, and made a human circle around them. Now, because they had that police protection, they wore their Gestapo uniforms. They flew their swastika flags and did all their Zig Heil Hitler, white power stuff. I saw Matt Cole and Martin Kerr, you know, they weren't in their black suit and tie, you know, looking, you know, nondescript. They were full out Nazi gear, right? And taunting the protesters. So they were in the middle of this circle. People would like rush the police. Police would have their shields and their batons and push people back, right? And then because they couldn't get through and attack the Nazis, they began throwing their bricks and whatever else they had over the heads of the police, hoping to land on one of the Nazis in the circle. Well, when they started doing that, the cops pulled out the tear gas and started spraying everybody. And this tear gas had something called CS gas in it, which was also a skin irritant. So not only did you start crying, but you would scratch because it itched, and you would scratch so hard your skin would come off. I'm serious. I got a whiff of that stuff, and so then these people got mad at that, and they began attacking the police, overturning police cars, bashing out the windows, and kicking out the headlights, setting buildings on fire downtown in D.C. You can go on YouTube and find all the footage of it. You'll even see me walking by, a young me. This is back in the 80s, but. Anyway, they were doing all that stuff. Well, I came home with my secretary, and we watched the news. And now back then, all you had was network TV. There was no cable back then. You had CBS, ABC, and NBC. And there was Matt Cole sitting in the NBC affiliate here in DC, WRC, sitting in the station with the anchor person, and they were showing the footage. He'd say, you see, it's not the Nazis overturning police cars and denying people their rights. It's the Jews and the blacks. They're denying us our right to freedom of assembly, denying us our right to freedom of speech. And then I understood exactly what he was doing. He knew this was going to happen. He knew it was going to happen. And he wanted to get that official footage of a legitimate, TV news network, ABC, CBS, NBC, who are all there. Take that footage out to the Pacific Northwest, out there where you are, Idaho, Oregon, Washington State, all that, and show it and say, you see what's happening in our nation's capital? Our country is being run by Zog, right? Zionist occupied government, all that kind of stuff. Come join us. We're going to take our country back. And that was a great recruitment tool for him. It just goes exactly what you were saying, how people set other people up to do certain things, and then they use that as a reason to go do something else and join our force in order to prevent this kind of thing.
And that's just one night of riots. I'm thinking in Portland, I think it was over 200 or 300 consecutive days at one point of rioting. That's like 200 tapes. That's 200 recruitment seminars. Like, if you want to think of it in terms like that.
5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you. When parents begin exercising their right to question their local school boards during the height of COVID, amid mass mandates, woke curricula, and harassment in schools, how did the DOJ respond? The Department of Justice responded under Merrick Garland with directing the public to report threats of violence to school board members, officials, and workers in our national public schools to a national hotline. One particular case, a mom was reported to the hotline as a threat because she was A, conservative, and B, she was a lawful gun owner, like myself. The complainant alleged that the mom was a threat because she belonged to a right-wing group known as Moms for Liberty. And I have a real problem with identifying people like this because it's your right to belong to whoever you want to belong to, and that's your freedoms. Another investigation opened because a tip to the hotline, a dad was investigated because according to the complainant, the dad fit the profile of an insurrectionist. I don't really know what that means, but that's interesting. And he had a lot of guns and threatened to use them. Yet when the FBI asked about the complainant about these threats from the dad, the complainant admitted that no specific information or observations or any crimes or threats. According to the FBI, not one of these school board-related investigations resulted in federal arrest or charges, not a single one. Recently, the DOJ announced that they were going to continue to prosecute people from January 6th to the tune of around 1,000 more people to be charged in not so distant future. Now, January 6th was over 2 years ago, and the DOJ is still looking to charge more people. Yet, when there is a true domestic terror threat like Antifa, the DOJ did not direct people to a national hotline, nor did they report these threats to our communities. Now, my colleagues on the left will tell you that Antifa doesn't exist. It's an idea. But my question is where is the intellectual curiosity to determine how Antifa, a highly coordinated domestic terrorist organization, is funded and organized? The DOJ did not set up a hotline for Antifa. They set up a hotline for you. No federal resources were set aside to investigate the violence that we saw unleashed across this country during the Summer of Love in 2020. Please note some of these photos. Wait a minute, that's not January 6th. That's May 31st, 2020. That's right in front of the White House. That's where the president lives. And at the time, President Trump was ushered into a bunker because his life was being threatened. Where was the hotline? Next photo. That's not January 6th either. That's July 27th. That is in Portland. And that is Antifa rioting and pillaging our country. Where was the hotline? Next slide. Well, hot damn. That's not January 6th either. Those are more rioters that are destroying and rioting in Salt Lake City. Next slide. I believe, is that it? But wait, there's more. And that's not January 6th either. That's June 1st, 2020. And that's the streets of DC that are being rioted and pillaged by rioters. Where's the outrage? Where's the hotline? This is what domestic terror looks like. This is not a school board meeting. There is no hotline for any of these riots. And we are going to have a hotline that's going to report parents for caring about their children's education. And even further, the DOJ would rather investigate 1,000 more people from January 6th than any single person in these photos. What a shame.
I'm sorry, things got out of hand, okay? Everything people are saying about me isn't true. I'm an actor. I'm a voice actor. I'm a musician. Stop the steal. What people saw yesterday was me doing vocal exercises, me just kind of, putting myself out there for the first time. The industry just doesn't want a white male unless they're literally storming the Capitol. Obviously save the children and do a coup. But also, as important or even more important is to just try to build my socials. This is my American Idol. This is The Voice. I think there is a hole in the market for sort of this reactionary psychopath that's also very musical. When I first started working with Q, I thought Q meant Quincy Jones. People said to me, what was yesterday? Was it a revolution? Was it a coup? It was an exercise in branding. We have no problem with the Capitol Police, by the way. We have no problem. They were nice to us. We took selfies with them. They let us in. We met a lot of them on 4chan. Sometimes I'm sad. And I feel like there's not a space for men to share their feelings in this country. And I think that's tragic. I'm willing to learn and grow. I've been reading a lot of tweets about my behavior that are making a lot of sense to me. And I'm going back in my childhood and I'm going, yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. It's okay if I like the show Shrill on Hulu. It's my favorite show. And I can admit that. I like it because it's a big, powerful woman that's confident. And that makes me happy. I'm the victim.
It's not that often that on the show we have historical figures, but this one is going to be a doozy. Jake Angeli is out of the gulag. There's a lot of misinformation about you out there. The most common name for you, and I purposely did as little homework as possible because there's so much misinformation about you in the media. I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. The most common nickname people have for you is the QAnon shaman. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. The first question I want to ask you is, how does it feel knowing that kids are going to see your picture in their textbooks in another 20, 30, 40 years because you have become, for better or worse, the visual symbol of January 6th?
Well, I'd like to hope and think and believe that I've more so become a visual symbol for freedom.
Yeah.
That's the message I've gotten for a lot of people, that it's like an icon for freedom. There's people all over the world that have, in other countries that have dressed up the way that I was dressed. One guy was in Italy, another guy was in Brazil, another guy was in Russia. There's a lot of people here in the United States that have dressed up that way. There's people that have dressed up as me for Halloween. So, it's flattering. I'm trying to stay humble about it, though.
Where did you get that headdress? Is it real buffalo head?
Oh, well, it's coyote skin
Okay.
and coyote tails. The horns, as far as I know, are not authentic.
Oh, these are right here on my chair.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, that's an awesome chair.
Yeah.
I got it over 10 years ago. I believe I got it on eBay. And I've been wearing it for over 10 years. So the way that people saw me dressed on January 6th is the way that I've been dressing for over 10 years. It was not anything that I wasn't already doing. A lot of people thought I just did it for that day, and that's nothing could be further from the truth.
So let's break down that nickname that the media gave you. Are you or have you ever been affiliated in any way with QAnon?
Well, first of all, QAnon is a fiction that was created by the Operation Mockingbird media. There's Q, and then there's the QAnons. And then there's the Anons. And then so the media created QAnon because they combined Q and then the Anons, the community of people that followed Q. And the reason why they did this is because as they reported on QAnon, they created a bunch of stories in the media and in search engines, essentially, that when people began to look up QAnon, all they would find is the media's false narrative regarding the Anons and Q. If instead they were talking about Q over and over and over again, asking who is Q, what is Q, etc., then people would then start following the Q drops, which the media does not want them to do. So what they did is what we're witnessing here is one psyop versus another.
Yeah.
And you have the Operation Mockingbird media psyop that is based on division, it's based on subversion, it's based on control and things like MK Ultra mind control. And then on the other side, what you have is the Q psyop, which it is a psychological operation. But the Q psyop is more so based on deprogramming or reprogramming people. It's based on getting the truth out to people about the fiat debt-based currency, child and human trafficking, corruption, blackmail, and stuff like that in the government. And so the counter psyop that is in charge of Operation Mockingbird, which would be CIA, and the other intelligence agencies that run these child trafficking industries that are corrupting our government through things like Jeffrey Epstein and blackmail. These individuals infiltrated the Anon groups online, and then they started spewing disinformation, things like JFK Jr. is alive and going to be Donald Trump's president, the earth is flat, that kind of stuff. And then once that disinformation campaign had run its course, then the media started reporting on QAnon and saying they believe the earth is flat, they believe JFK Jr. is still alive, and they didn't touch all this stuff about blackmail, fiat currency, and child and human trafficking. You see? So this is how this kind of stuff works. So QAnon is a fiction.
I had this great tweet from a fan yesterday that I would love your response to, because I was like, you nailed it on the head. The guy said, and he does use the term QAnon, but I'm quoting him. He goes, "It's telling how out of all the BS nonsense that QAnon believed in, the media honed in on the one thing they were basically right about: international pedophile rings serving global elite as their big example of what a supposedly absurd belief to discredit them with." And it's kind of fascinating. You speak about the Mockingbird media, how blue-pilled people can tell you with a straight face that Jeffrey Epstein was a monster, that he was arrested, that the things he did are horrible. And yet, if you believe in an international pedophile ring for the elites, you're a crazy person. And they will have these two beliefs in their head simultaneously. And if you say, well, that's a contradiction, no, you're crazy.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's called cognitive dissonance. They have a cognitive dissonance at the fact that there is a large international corrupting child trafficking ring that international entities like, say, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, even things like NATO, the UN, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, that these entities use these child trafficking rings to blackmail people into submission, and then they place them at high levels of power so that they will do as they're told, not do what's best for people.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other part of the nickname. Have you ever identified as being a shaman of some sort?
Well, I practice shamanism, but one of the funny things is that I never, ever, ever called myself the QAnon shaman, but the media said that I gave myself that name, that I called myself the QAnon shaman. That never happened.
Can you tell me what practicing shamanry means?
Well, look at it like this. Shamanism is the oldest religion in the world because it is the first religion. And all shamanic cultures practice ceremonial use of things like sacred plants or things in the ecosystem. So all shamans are connected to nature. All shamanic cultures believe in a unifying spiritual deity or a unified field of energy. All shamanic cultures believe in the use of things like song, dance, drumming, and singing. They all practice some form of healing. And they all believe in the spirit world, and they all have certain sacraments or things in nature that they believe are sacred. All shamans also, the good ones that are out there that aren't charlatans or people seeking power, they chase off evil spirits, they ward off evil spirits, and they prevent negative timelines from manifesting for the culture. So they make sure that crops are good, they call the rain, they make sure that the people are healthy, etc. So that's what I practice, is all of those things. And that's why I say it's the first religion, it's the oldest religion, because all religions, one way or another, are practicing an ancient form of shamanism because they all believe in all of these things.
Does that mean, should I take it to mean that you're an Elizabeth Warren supporter?
No.
Well, when she dances, she makes it rain.
Oh, well, I don't know about all that.
How about another question? Should I take it, reading between the lines, that you've met the elves?
The DMT elves?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, can you explain to people what your first experience was like breaking the veil and meeting the elves?
Well, the first time that I ever met them, it was kind of a compounding experience. I shot up a tower, a spinning tower of like multicolored fractal-like patterns. And I shot up out of this tower, and at the top of the tower was like a Vitruvian man, with the hands out, only I was that Vitruvian man. And I like shot out of the crown of the Vitruvian man and into the ether. And then I saw like galaxies, I saw stars, I saw the very fabric of reality itself. And then as I moved into these higher dimensions and planes of consciousness, I ended up interacting with and meeting all of these different entities that existed and lived in that realm. And it was almost like an interdimensional handshake of all of the entities that lived in the DMT space. It was really quite cool. And then as I started to come down, it was like I was coming down through this like the machinery that makes the universe run and move and tick. And it was all based on sacred geometry and stuff. And I was coming down this fractal sacred geometric machine and then back into my body. And then boom, I was back in my body.
Did they have some kind of message for you?
Not the first time. The first time it was more so just like, hey, nice to meet you. Glad you're here.
What about other times? I mean, have a lot of people, when they break the veil, they come back with some kind of message or revelation?
I've never really gotten any sort of like message or revelation from them any more than, reality is not what you think it is. If anything, the message was everything is based on energy, frequency, and vibration. And if you change the frequency, then you change the reality. Like changing radio dials, changing the dial on a radio. You go to a different radio station, all of a sudden, all of this is gone. And you're somewhere else. Your consciousness is somewhere else. Not your physical body, but your consciousness is able to travel the etheric realms.
Let's move on to an important segment with January 6th and some new video which was debuted last night on Tucker Carlson's show. So, of course, let's step back. Part of the speakership deal that Kevin McCarthy apparently had to agree to was to give thousands of hours of January 6th footage to the Tucker Carlson show producers that they could comb through to see if they could find some different stuff that had not been reviewed by both the January 6th committee and had not yet been aired by CNN, by the New York Times, or any of the mainstream media outlets. One of the clips that Tucker aired on his show last night is, I think, pretty extraordinary. It shows the famed QAnon shaman effectively being led through the halls of the Capitol by Capitol Police, multiple Capitol Police who could have taken him down at any one point. And at one point, Crystal, opening the door to the Senate chamber for the QAnon shaman to then take those famous photos where he was literally on the Senate floor. So let's go ahead and play this for everybody. Tucker is narrating some of the footage here. Let's take a listen.
Dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. For these crimes, Chansley was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison, far more time than many violent criminals now receive. What did Jacob Chansley do to receive this punishment? To this day, there is dispute over how Chansley got into the Capitol building. But according to our review of the internal surveillance video, it is very clear what happened once he got inside. Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol Police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him. We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down. Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies. Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate. Watch.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us in this building.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single innocent explanation for that. And one of the reasons why I think that's important is, as Tucker said, Chansley was not only sentenced, he's now serving, I believe, a pretty lengthy...
He said 4 years.
Yeah, 4-year sentence in prison. We should remember this, that the judge involved in this case and many other cases actually denied these defendants access to this footage, specifically because the defendants were like, hey, the footage is going to show that these cops let us in there. And it goes against the narrative. So anyway, I think that that certainly is important when we're dealing with this. I'm not defending this guy. Clearly he was off his rocker and clearly he was crazy. But, you know, you got 9 uniformed police officers armed who are opening doors, effectively escorting him around the building. That's crazy. You and I were talking a little bit about the show.
Yeah.
I cannot come up with any innocent explanation for this. I don't think it exists unless they just sympathize with him.
Right.
For part of the reason why he's like, part of the reason he thanks them in his shamanistic prayer,
and
for allowing him on the floor.
Sees them as allies. Right in the wake of, first of all, let me say, look, Tucker has a narrative that he has been pushing about January 6th, and he, you know, has like attempted to cherry pick, I have no doubt, the footage that backs up his version of the day. Okay, so let's just put that out there. But that aside, let's deal with what is actually portrayed in this video, because I remember right after January 6th, there were all these videos floating around of like Capitol Police officers opening up the gates outside. And people on the left were like, and liberals were like, what the hell is this about? Like, why are you doing that? Now, it's also absolutely the case, based on other footage that we've seen, that there were violent scuffles and assaults, and there were Capitol Police officers who were trying to keep the doors closed, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look at this footage, like, I want to know what was going on in their heads where they're just milling around or they're actively helping him find an entrance into the chambers. How do you justify that? And it seems like, remember, Sagar, also, right after January 6th, there's a little bit of reporting that was very critical of the Capitol Police because the response was atrocious. I mean, we covered that investigation into how all of their riot shields were like locked in a bus that nobody had the key to. It was total Keystone Cops thing. And it was also, there was also continue to be huge questions about how it could be the case that you had infiltrators in some of these groups. We know that. And yet you were unable, when there was an actual, like, real threat going on here, to disrupt this event. And you were too busy, like, you know, inventing conspiracies for Gretchen Whitmer, or as we covered on the show with Trevor Aronson, the focus on, like, inserting agent provocateurs into Black Lives Matter. Like, you're doing all that stuff. But you've got infiltrators in these groups, and you're not able to, like, muster sufficient security to disrupt this actual threat. So to me, it just adds to a whole lot of questions about what exactly happened with the Capitol Police, about whether they saw themselves as allies with these people who were storming the Capitol, and the failures of our intelligence and law enforcement agencies to get ahead of this threat when they should have had all of the assets in place they needed to know that this was ultimately coming.
Tucker also exposed something important about Ray Epps, the potential agent provocateur who is on video multiple times saying we need to go into the Capitol. Minutes after texting his nephew, quote, "I orchestrated it," Epps swore to the January 6th committee that he had left. Surveillance video clearly shows him on the Capitol grounds 30 minutes later, after he told investigators that he had left the grounds of the Capitol. So he lied. He's just been exposed straight up as a liar to Congress. He committed an act of perjury. Now, do I think that they're going to refer him to the Department of Justice and they'll prosecute potentially one of their own? No, I don't. You also remember from the New York Times, their very sympathetic portrait of Epps. He's like, I've had to move and all that. They never asked him really point blank one time. They're like, hey, did you cooperate with the FBI? Were you an FBI informant? Let's also not forget the Proud Boys, that has come out in the trial and the indictments, was the leader of the organization was an informant. We also, from the Oath Keepers indictment and the eventual convictions and stuff that came out in the trial, there was a lot of FBI infiltration into some of these groups. So look, I don't know what happened. And I'm not saying that it was a total setup. I'm not saying that it was a peaceful day or any of that. Clearly, there was a lot of violence that occurred. But I think that there is a hell of a lot of questions to ask about the Capitol Police officers that were involved. Specific, I mean, the QAnon shaman effectively is what? He's like the mascot of what happened.
He became the most visible symbol of...
You got 9 cops who were standing outside and opening a door for an unarmed guy when he's walking onto the Senate floor. And also, I don't know if you people remember, but there was video from the floor of the Senate where one of the officers was like, hey, like, just so you know, like, this is one of the most hallowed, important grounds. Well, why did you let him in there? I mean, why would you open the door to make sure that the guy can get into the chamber?
It seems to me like there was a chaotic period of actual exploration of the events of the day in the immediate aftermath of January 6th. And then the Democratic Party decided the narrative they wanted to go with was the Capitol Police officers were heroes.
Yeah, you're right.
Uniformly, right? And I'm not saying there weren't heroic efforts on that day among individual members of the Capitol Police. But I think that these images raise a lot of questions about, to say the least, about whether that was uniformly the case. But they wanted this very black and white narrative. And so they killed any potential nuance. They, didn't show the public any of this footage that paints a very different picture that's at odds with the very Disneyfied black and white version of events that they were portraying, in which the Capitol Police officers were the heroes and, these individuals coming to the Capitol were the villains and they were clashing, and that was the end of the story. So in any case, like I said at the top, listen, Tucker has his narrative that he's pushing, and he wants to pick the footage that is going to serve his narrative, just like the Democrats had their narrative that they were pushing, and they wanted to pick the footage that, ultimately backed up their point of view. I wish we could have a broader, more public revelation of all of this footage so that we could have the nuanced picture of that day that the American people still deserve and will probably never get.
Part of the reason I'm not that troubled by it is, like, look, at this point, the New York Times literally won a Pulitzer Prize for reconstructing the violence on January. You can watch every violent clip known to man that happened on Jan 6. This is the stuff that we have not had any real expose into. So look, I don't agree. I don't disagree. Tucker has his agenda. He's been saying it's a, what did he say? It was a setup, basically.
It was a false flag.
It was a false flag
event.
No, I don't think it was 100% false flag. Do I think that there were, elements of informants and agents and all that stuff that were involved on the day of January 6th? I think that's effectively a fact
to me,
at this point.
The bigger question isn't like, oh, did the FBI set this up? Because listen, honestly, seeing the way that they operate, I really severely doubt that they have the capability and the competence to be able to pull off some grand scheme such as this. I think the bigger question, and Trevor Aronson, who's written a lot about the FBI and who we had on for his podcast about the agent provocateur and the BLM protests in Denver. I think the bigger question is, what is the FBI? How is the FBI so incredibly failing at their job when it comes to actual threats that they should be able to disrupt, while they're so busy, with these agent provocateurs here and Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plots there and going back in time, obviously the, effectively entrapment of young Muslim men with regards to the war on terror. They're so busy creating crimes that they can then try to disrupt and write in like they're the heroes. That how do you miss? Was that distracting you from actually paying attention to the intelligence you could have been gathering from your infiltration of these groups? And if that's the case, what use are you ultimately if you can't do the thing that you're supposed to do because you're so distracted by these big shiny plots that you want to construct over here? So to me, that's the sort of bigger picture question about this day, about the operation of these agencies, and then specifically with regard to the Capitol Police. They really need to be. I wish there was one mainstream outlet with some level of credibility that would ask some questions about, why were you just milling around? Why were you letting this dude, trying the doors and letting this dude into the chamber? What is that about? Give us an answer that makes some sense here.
Instead, we gave him $500 million more. We didn't fire anybody who was involved, and we turned the United States capital city into effectively the green zone from Iraq.
Contradictory to the story, or it's not a lie, it's not a mistake, it's not an error, it's not something we have to apologize for.
Okay.
Our story was contradictory to the facts. You still have somebody on your payroll that is still continuing to further the lie and the conspiracy theory.
Where's my apology for the way that you fraudulently fabricated media in a way that you arguably throttled me? Trumpers, conservatives through targeting. Whether it's Candace Owens on Facebook or Steven Crowder on YouTube. When it's far to ban your own president, so don't question why I'm in a bad mood. They lied about what really happened when 45 had the photo op outside the church in D.C. that BLM had chose to drop. They lied again when they claimed Trump said the pandemic was all a hoax. 6 months they made him sound incompetent in front of a lot of folks. Lab leaks from Wuhan. White supremacists find people. Alleged balance for the head of soldiers. Find the fraud shit isn't legal. Every story has been corrected, but the damage already done. All a part of an insurrection that's still election. They never won.
We ain't coming in peace. Nah, we ain't coming in peace. We demanding our country back. We want Biden impeached. Take him out and put Trump in there. Everybody knows that they cheated. Take him out and put Trump in there. Everybody knows that they cheated. We ain't coming in peace. Nah, we ain't coming in peace. We demanding our country back. We want Biden impeached. Take him out and put Trump in there. Everybody knows that they cheated. Everybody knows that they cheated. Everybody knows that they cheated.
Hey, isn't Biden everything that y'all claim Trump to be? Isn't being a dictator why y'all wanted Trump impeached? False masks, vaccines, I guess it's not up to me. So I want all of y'all, my body, my choice, people to shut up to me. Hey, I wanna give y'all a heads up. Patriots get fed up on game. All these masks get burned. Vaccine passports all get shredded up on game. Where's Alex Jones when you need him, huh? He told us this was coming, people ain't believe him, huh? Please don't stand out, cause I think that we can beat him, huh? Globalism coming if we don't fight for our freedoms, huh? Kanye West said slavery was a choice, and y'all gon' prove him right if you don't start to fight for your voice.
We ain't coming in peace, nah, we ain't coming in peace. We demanding our country back. We want Biden impeached. Take him out and put Trump in there. Everybody knows that they cheated. Take him out and put Trump in there. Everybody knows that they cheated. We
Hey, a few days ago, I played a video of a guy speaking at the Michigan State Capitol, and to me, he looked like a right-wing gun guy. But his speech was super surprising. He identifies as a Boogaloo boy, and the young man reached out to us, and I had the opportunity to hear straight from the source, which is always better. So corporate media can't be trusted, and corporate media is about creating fear and sensationalism. And I'm going to presume that this guy is genuine. The question I always think about is, how do we reach out to fellow working people like this? How do we find common interests? There are no easy answers, and these are always uncomfortable questions. And I'm not just talking about this in an academic theory kind of way, but in real world terms. We can't ignore this is happening in the country, and it's going to get worse. Working people are being brutalized. People are alienated, disillusioned. People know they've been abandoned by their government, and now they're looking for community. They're looking for tribes and looking for connection, because we live in a failed state and a failed society. This pandemic has made it explicitly clear that our government has abandoned its people. And how do we talk to them? Is the left going to turn into Hillary Clinton and call them deplorables and discard them? Instead of demonizing people because they don't hold the exact same set in stone ideology that we have? And if you actually traveled around America as I have, you will find people's ideologies are wildly inconsistent and always in flux and constantly changing. If there are people who are pro-LGBTQ, against war, against the corporate dominance of the state, people who reject the two-party duopoly and who work alongside Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and they want a general strike, well, we have to be able to talk to those people, because if we can't talk to those people, that's bad. That shows the weakness on our side. Yes, I would rather have the dudes with guns protecting Black Lives Matter protests instead of them threatening Black Lives Matter protests. Social movements should always be in dialogue. I presume this interview that I did with this young man is going to be used to attack me. And this interview is not an endorsement of any group, because I don't know how representative this person is of an entire group. I'm dropping the entire interview, and I think you'll find the conversation is full of surprises. All right, so we have our first guest on. I'm going to get in big trouble for talking to this gentleman. We first saw our guest speak in a video of him in the front of the Michigan State Capitol. He made critiques of the war, of the wars, not just the war. He made critiques of the wars and the corporate-controlled state. He called for unity of the American people and of social movements. Well, let's play a little bit of it, shall we?
Antifa, Boogaloo, and right-wing militias, they are the antibodies, not the disease that is destroying our country. The disease is a country run by two corrupt political parties that do not care about you. So deeply incestuous with corporations that they are indistinguishable from each other. A government that spent 6 months debating whether to give their own people $600, but only 24 hours to unanimously agree to give billions of dollars to foreign tyrannical governments and corporations. A government that has bombed villages overseas my entire life for my supposed safety here. This is a call for unity. For all of American people that realize the true threat against us to come together. For every mother mourning her children that was killed by police, for every business crushed down by state lockdowns, for every broken soldier sent to fight wars that have no point. This is our last chance to avoid either a tyrannical government or a bloody and pointless civil war among American people who do not have that much against each other and have more in common than they realize. And a message to the government: we come in peace. We do not intend to commit violence, but I am pleading with you, with tears in my eyes and cracks in my voice. If you continue to oppress the American people, they will remain rational no longer. Thank you.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so I played that with Ron Placone. on our show the other day, and we couldn't find anything in that speech we disagreed with, and I wanted to explore his beliefs further. So he was kind enough to reach out to us, and he goes by the name, ready? Magnus Panvidya. And there's a story behind that name. Please welcome to the show, Magnus Panvidya. Hi, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Jimmy. Nice to meet you. Kind of crazy that I'm here. I would have never expected to end up here, but longtime fan.
I would never expect to be talking to a right-wing guy in a Hawaiian shirt. I never thought that was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit more of an anarchist, but
oh, okay, all right. We'll get it. So let's get into it. Let's get in. First of all, tell people how you got your name. Now, I found out that your parents were hippies.
Yeah, I was raised in the middle of nowhere next to a little pagan hippie commune that I used to go to. I used to be an environmental activist my whole life. So, yeah, kind of not what you would expect for most people.
Wow. Okay. So, and how did you get the name?
We had to come up with kind of our own names on the commune. We didn't want to go by our own names. So everybody had their witchy, hippie, D&D names, essentially. So I came up with that when I was like 13. I've used it ever since.
So now that is not... So are you... Okay, so that is not what people think of when they think of right-wing militia types or the Proud Boys or Boogaloos or anything. That's not what they think. They don't think of a guy brought up on a commune, got to pick his own name, his parents are hippies, and he spent most of his life as an environmental activist. That's not what people think of. So how did you go from that to Boogaloo Boys?
Oh, that's just because kind of the whole thing the media doesn't talk about with the Boogaloo Boys is we're more of like the libertarian Green Party militia. Like if I wanted to join a regular militia that flies Confederate flags and it's a bunch of fat old white dudes, that's there. But we kind of formed out of a bunch of libertarians and anti-war activists and everything wanting a place of our own. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the colorful Hawaiian print and, a lot of our members being LGBT and, across the entire, every ethnicity, every spectrum. And we wanted more of a home for ourselves. So we kind of grew out of not wanting to be the traditional right-wing conservative white dude militia.
So you're not about hating gays and you don't hate the gays?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I was told that...
Matter of fact, I'm not the most straight man myself, so...
Oh, well, you better... Okay, watch out. So, Jude Law, is that your guy? That's my guy. I don't know who you I don't know who you go for.
Orlando Bloom, actually.
Great choice.
So...
They let me watch too much Lord of the Rings as a kid.
So now I already got in trouble for even playing your video on my... When I say in trouble, I mean the usual bad faith attackers came at me, the people who want to keep us divided, the people who take corporate money, that kind of stuff. Now tell me about the... Because since I played your video, other blue check reporter types have been sending me news articles about how the Boogaloo Boys are violent racists and terrorists, and they even killed a cop, and a couple of them got arrested on the way to a rally, a Black Lives Matter rally, and they had explosives. Now that's not made up, right? I saw it on 60 Minutes.
No, that's not made up, and obviously we're an entire national movement. Hundreds of thousands of people. You're gonna have idiots. You're gonna have accelerationists and extremists and people that do things that we don't want them to do. And it's become even harder now that we're banned off of all social media that we can't even keep track of the idiots in our movement and deal with them. So that's been fun.
Oh, so you're saying that by suppressing the speech of the most extreme members and the most violent members, it's now hard to tell who they are.
Yeah, and a lot of people on Twitter and everything will be like, oh, you guys might not be neo-Nazis, but there are neo-Nazi Boogaloo people. And I'm like, well, I don't know where they are. I can't find them or talk to them. They're on a million different websites, so I can't deal with them. We can't go out and purge these people from our movement because we've been blown all over the internet. When we were all on Facebook, we had this under control. We never had this problem. But once we got banned off of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I even got banned off of Google and PayPal. So
I know. I know. And so you're saying the censoring of people more extreme than you, and actually people who are violent, the censoring of their speech is now actually creating a bigger problem because it's harder to identify those people and weed them out.
Absolutely. Like when we were all on Facebook and we would be in group messenger and everything, and a guy was like, oh, I had a really bad day. I think I'm just going to, do something stupid. I'm going to fly off the handle. We can't wait any longer. We could all talk him down and be like, no, that's stupid. Don't go out and do that. That's not what we're about. And we could all work that out. Now that guy is on some parlor chat buried deeply around a bunch of really iffy people egging him on. And there's no one there to tell him, hey, that's not what this movement's about. We're not here to just go out and shoot cops and commit terrorist attacks. It's never been what it's about.
So I've been told that the Boogaloo Boys want a racial civil war.
No, not at all. The whole calling it a Boogaloo, the whole meme behind it was just that it's a bad sequel to original because it came from the Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo movie, which was just a bad sequel to a bad movie. And in our context, it just means some form of civil conflict, whether that be a peaceful singing revolution, whether that be some awful government civil war, whether that be a second revolutionary civil war, or to the idiot neo-Nazi types, they would consider it a race war. And that's a meme that's been around forever. So when it comes to us, we are more of we view this as a upcoming, hopefully peaceful second American Revolution where all of these groups, like I talked about, come together and we tell these giant corporations and these two political parties that we're done with them. We don't want them anymore and it's time to go.
And so you do understand, though, when people see you dressed in military gear with your beard and you're carrying an AR-15 or whatever that is, that immediately it scares the shit out of people, and that they think all bad things about you, that you are racist, that you want violence. And, because the president just stoked the violence on January 6th and stuff like that. So you do understand that, though, right?
Yeah, I get it. I have disagreements with it, but especially after this whole summer and everything, I've traveled around to a lot of events, and I can tell you now, everyone has guns. The BLM protesters have guns. The Proud Boys have guns. We have guns. The cops have guns. Everybody's walking around really armed. I had a gun pulled on me in Detroit over this summer by bikers when I was doing security for a BLM event, which was funny. So
you did security for a BLM event? How did that come about?
Because before the mainstream media even wrote a single article about us, we had blown up everywhere because all across the country, we were showing up to George Floyd events because the unreported story behind all of this is we have a lot in common with the Breonna Taylor story, because within 48 hours of what happened to Breonna Taylor, separately in Maryland, a man named Duncan Lemp was killed in a no-knock raid. The police shot him through his window and shot his pregnant girlfriend. They then lied about why they got the warrant. They lied and said they shot him from inside the building when it came out only 2 weeks ago, almost a year later, they killed him from outside of the building. So then we started going out as libertarians, going out to BLM events with, Breonna Taylor signs, Duncan Lemp signs, being like, hey, this is across the political spectrum. This police state thing that's going on, they're killing everybody. And we're out here and we're in support. We disagree with this. So all summer long, we did both marched in solidarity and in some cases did security for BLM events where you had these other groups coming to fight people. And we were welcomed with open arms across all of these. Like I can send you a million Facebook posts and live stream of people being like, we're so happy you're here. We love you. And then the media establishment caught wind that there was armed white libertarian dudes marching in support with a bunch of socialists and BLM and everything. And they said unacceptable. And they dropped the hammer. And that's when all of the Department of Homeland Security and anti-extremist researchers came out of the woodwork and like, oh, these are white supremacists. These are evil people. They're only there to kill people and everything. And the ride began.
So you were actually welcomed by Black Lives Matter. You actually provided security for Black Lives Matter. You actually marched in solidarity against police violence because you realize it's not a left-right issue. It's a us against them issue, right? It's the cops against us. It's the establishment against us, and the laws all favor them, and it protects them. And you're right. I think I agree with that. How could you disagree with that? How about, and so tell us some more. Would the majority of the Boogaloo Boys agree with your sentiments that you said in that video and what you're saying right now? Would the majority of the Boogaloo Boys agree with you?
Absolutely. Like, it pretty much our core foundation is, if you're not a bigoted piece of shit and you understand that both parties are the problem and you're willing to do something about it and you're willing to get out in the streets and you're willing to make your voice heard, you're welcome. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you do. In that video, it doesn't show it, but I walked in, the woman standing next to me is a local BLM organizer for Lansing, Michigan, and I walked in with the local anti-fascist organization as well. So it wasn't just us standing up there. It was the local BLM, it was the local anti-fascist organization, and it was the Boogaloo. And we kind of represent this idea we've been pushing of the Unity Coalition. And we're growing pretty big in both Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan, to where we've been marching together constantly. There's a Boogaloo group in Kentucky, in Louisville, called the United Pharaohs Guard that's been out with BLM protesters every day since the very beginning, and they're welcome with open arms.
So, do you know the history of people who do this kind of thing? You know what it is, right? The people who try to combine the populist left, the populist right, to fight the establishment. You know the history of people who do this, right?
Yeah, we get mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah, and killed out in the open. I mean, that's what they do. That's what they did to Fred Hampton when he did this. But you're going to do it anyway. So you reach out to the Black Lives Matter. You reach out to Antifa. The Boogaloo Boys reach out to Antifa. The Black Lives Matter. You march. You're anti-war. You're for peace. You're against racism. You're against police brutality. What else? What would be some other big things?
Pro sex work decriminalization, legalize all drugs, end all the wars, close the ICE detainment camps.
Where did you get that from? Why are you against? You're against the ICE detainment camps?
Yeah, I think when it comes to, like, the border things, I'm more of an open borders guy. But even looking at it from a conservative viewpoint, if you got to deport people, then deport people. Why are you holding people in camps? Why are you holding people in these horrible, uncomfortable positions? If you don't want them in the country, then deport them. Why are you doing this? It's awful. It's inhumane. And if this was going on at any other time period under any other presidency, people would be burning the country down over it. Never again is what we said. But we're putting people in camps again.
So people. Well, I want to say who are your political opposites, but they're not, because the whole point of your thing is that we have a lot of agreement. And so what I've said on this show is that, the problems we're facing right now aren't left-right issues. They're oppressive issues that affect all of us. And so we have to fight those first so we can get back to fighting a left-right issue. That's what I look for. That's almost a luxury, being able to fight Democrats, Republicans. Right now, we know there's one party of war, one party of Wall Street, one party of a big pharma and health insurance companies and fossil fuel companies. They own all, and Silicon Valley, by the way, which is why we're all being censored.
Yep.
So that, to me, that's the bigger problem right now that affects left, right, center, middle. It's a class war that we're in right now, right? You feel that it's a class war?
Absolutely. And that's where we butt into it with conservative groups a lot, because we're very anti-police. And they're like, why do you not support the police and everything? And it's like, well, as a gun owner, who's going to come and take that gun? The cops. As someone who likes marijuana, who's going to come and arrest me for that? The cops. So, we run into that trying to explain to people that, like, no, it is the top versus the bottom. It is not the left versus the right. We can argue about healthcare when we're not dropping bombs on foreign countries. We can argue about, how much we put into public education when people aren't having their doors kicked in and killed in their homes. Right. And it turns out to be the wrong address. There's more important things going on.
So yeah, we would agree on the war. We would agree on the corporate control of our government. We would agree on police brutality. We're not going to agree on the Second Amendment. And we probably won't. What about healthcare? What do you? When I'll tell you what, I go back and forth on the Second Amendment. I was always against guns, and then I was like, well, the only people who don't have guns in the country are the citizens. The cops have them. And then I went.
If you want to go into that really quick, I actually had. I'm assuming they were neo-Nazis, but I'm not sure. Show up to my house in the middle of the night after a protest and scream things I couldn't say on YouTube at my window at 3 a.m. And I called the police, and they told me they couldn't do anything about it, and that they weren't even going to show up to do a wellness check. So that's why I have that there.
Oh, okay. Okay. I hear you. All right. Yeah, I hear you. I'm back to being against guns again. I know I'm back to being this is the one issue I go back and forth on. I'm against them again because the cops are always going to have more guns. They're always going to have more guns, right? So because the argument was always, well, we need to have our guns to protect ourselves from the tyranny of the government, right? And to protect our rights. Except the government already took your rights away. They took away we live in a surveillance state. You have the Fourth Amendment's gone. And now they're taking away our freedom of speech. So when are you? I always say, well, you have your guns. Why don't you go get your Fourth Amendment back? And of course, that reveals that that's really not what it's about. The people like guns because they like guns, and you like it for your own personal protection. That's what you're saying. So it's not really about defending ourselves from the government, right?
Well, I definitely think when you talk about the more older right-wing guys that say like, oh, we will use our guns to get our Fourth Amendment back, and then they lick the boot. We're different. We're a younger generation. We're over that. Our event in Virginia that happened on the 18th, which was the day after mine, we showed up with Black Panthers. We showed up with armed leftist groups, and they recently passed a law that said you're not allowed to have guns in the capital of Virginia. And all of those groups walked in armed to the teeth, side by side, and walked in there because we're not licking the boot. We're not doing that. We're going to follow through on this. And, I've always said, you don't go out and start a fight with the government. Just stop participating in the government and prepare yourself because it'll come to you. If you're doing a rent strike, if you're doing a tax strike, you don't have to go on the offensive, but they will come for you afterwards.
Yes.
And that's when you defend yourself, if you feel that way.
So people say, why show up to the Capitol with a gun? Who are you looking to shoot someone at the Capitol?
Well, it's particularly at those very steps. We've showed up to BLM events and everything, and we've watched some of those ladies that were with BLM get jumped and get beat up and have their property torn up, and the cops just stood there, just watched it happen. So then the BLM people started showing up with guns. They have rifles. They have, they're concealed carrying, and we showed up as well, and that stopped happening. So it's more so towards the line of the police will not protect you anymore. At any of these events, they won't do anything for it. Just a couple of weeks ago in Louisville, there ended up almost being a gunfight in the street because a car blew through 2 lanes of traffic and drove straight through a Black Lives Matter protest and almost ran 3 people over and started shooting. And the police didn't do anything about it. They didn't block the road. They didn't pursue that vehicle. They didn't help anyone. They just stood there and watched. So that's kind of, where we're getting to in this country and why you see a lot of left-wing people not only purchasing firearms, but showing up to events with firearms. It's because the cops aren't going to do nothing. They don't care about you. They're there to protect property and the government. They don't care about the people.
I mean, Bernie Sanders works with people like Mike Lee, who's a pretty extreme right-winger in the Senate. I don't know if he's ever worked with Ted Cruz on anything. But you don't seem.
I think they co-founded, authored. What bill was it? I don't remember. They did work together once, though.
Oh yeah, Bernie and Ted Cruz did work together. Look at that.
Yeah.
And you don't seem as extreme as Ted Cruz to me. You don't seem as extreme as. You seem way more rational and reasonable. And I saw the 60 Minutes piece they did on you, and or not on you, but on the Boogaloo Boys. And
I was in that that documentary for Lansing.
Oh yeah, you were in that? Yeah. Okay. No matter how many times. Well, let me just. So we seem to agree on some of the big problems in our country. You and I. Would you agree that the corporate capture of our government's a big problem?
Oh yeah, we essentially live under a fascist state. If you define fascism as corporations and government working together, then we live under that 100%. You see the secret bailouts, you see the public bailouts, you see how These big corporations can do almost anything, and they never go under. You don't hear about these mega corporations making one big mistake and falling apart like they're supposed to do under capitalism. They last forever. And definitely they're so in alignment and they work so hand in hand that I don't even consider them private companies. You see a lot of conservatives and libertarians being like, oh, Facebook's a private company. They can do whatever they want. They receive millions of dollars from the government. They get exclusive contracts from the government. They work with government, work with politicians daily. They're an arm of the government. We have the department of Facebook, essentially. It's not even a company anymore.
Right. Wow, that's well said. That's a good way to put it. I think it's a good way to put it. So we agree on a lot of. So what do you think are some of the solutions? Right? How do we fix the war problem? How do we fix the social media problem? What do you have any solutions?
I definitely think if we're talking in the realms of the cleanest and most least violent way to do it, I think mass non-participation, mass strikes, mass protests, tax strikes, stop getting involved. I've told a lot of people that I like the idea of the Chaz of just declaring an area declaring itself being like, hey, we don't like your government anymore. We're not going to participate. If you're going to use my tax dollars to blow up brown kids in the Middle East, I'm not going to pay taxes anymore. If you're going to send your police departments into a certain neighborhood, or you're going to run a ICE detention facility in our city and we don't want it, then you're not getting my city taxes. I will not participate anymore. And people got to stop being afraid of the consequences of those actions and start putting their money where their mouth is.
Wow. I did not expect you to say some of the stuff you're saying. Like I certainly did not expect you to say that you wanted to get rid of the ICE detention centers and stuff like that. And that's fucking wild.
Politics is crazy in the new century here we have going on here.
So, but people would say that you and I that people like me should not reach out or work with people like you ever. That's what people would say. Even though you're anti-racist, you're pro-LGBT, you're anti-ICE, you're anti-police, you're pro-peace, anti-war. I don't know what, but even though they already did. I don't know if you saw, but I don't look at my mentions on Twitter anymore for the last month and a half or so, because I don't like to see people I know say mean things about me. It hurts my feelings. So I don't, but my friends, were telling me that they were giving me a hard time about even featuring your video. Did you see any of that?
No, I didn't see any of that. I only saw glowing support, which surprises me because I've gone, the last 6 months being told. Alex Jones did a conspiracy theory about me. I was actually on his show. He said that I was a paid CIA informant to destroy the Second Amendment. So I'm used to catching it from both sides all the time. So it was actually refreshing to see people in support.
So Alex Jones is your enemy on this?
Apparently I'm some CIA action. You see it a lot from the right and the left. Like if we'll go to a Second Amendment protest and the left will be like, what are you doing? But then we'll go to a Black Lives Matter protest and the conservatives will be like, oh, you guys are all communists, destroyers, And so especially, being libertarian and being in this weird middle ground, just used to all sorts of people claiming a bunch of things about us that aren't true.
I think the Hawaiian shirts are a great touch. Honest to God. I know I'm not making a joke. I think because you guys look scary. You're carrying fucking guns. You're in military garb. You got big beards, which Steph and I make fun of beards. We do that. Just so you know.
Oh, God.
I mean,
I know.
Right. Look, it's so luscious.
It is.
All right, I'll give it to you. I will say he's the first. Do you like his beard? I don't know. I generally hate beards, but he kind of pulls it off.
Hey, you make Tucker Carlson want to pardon Assange, and I make Jimmy Dore like beards. This is correct.
And so you guys are also against censorship, right? So you're for Julian Assange?
Yeah, free Julian Assange, free Ross Ulbricht, free Edward Snowden, free Chelsea Manning. I mean, I think our Chelsea already got freed, but
yeah, but she didn't get pardoned. She got
pardoned.
She just got commuted, right?
Yeah.
So they can still mess with her.
Yeah. Against all of that,
Wow. Well, it's going to be funny to watch people twist this interview to somehow attack us.
Well, they'll just say that I'm lying about all this. They'll just say that I'm making this all up to reach out to the left and that we're secretly infiltrating all of these groups, which is why we show up in Hawaiian and, are very loud. We don't, it makes perfect sense.
So you're saying it would be ridiculous that you guys are trying to infiltrate. You guys are easily identifiable by your Hawaiian shirts and your LGBT flags.
Yeah, if we were, sneaky white supremacists that were trying to infiltrate left-wing movements, we definitely picked the most inefficient and preposterous way to attempt to do that.
Well, the fight is top to bottom right now in America. It's not left to right. Chris Hedges has said that on our show. I've said that. Lots of people make that point. It's obvious. It's obvious that it's not a left-right fight anymore, and I can't wait to get back to the days where we could start fighting over how much to fund education and how much. But so what? Let me ask you. So, just before we go, just to see, what about now? You're young. Have you ever been sick and seriously ill?
Oh yeah, I have a nice suite of kind of autoimmune issues. So.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Now, do you have health insurance through your work or anything?
Oh, of course not. And I can't afford private insurance either because of our weird middle ground where we're not private, but we're also not public. We're this weird corporate in-between medical system. It doesn't work for anybody.
So you don't have health care? You don't have Obamacare even?
Nope.
Wow. Okay, so where do you fall on the healthcare debate? Do you think that everybody should get the same healthcare my grandmother does? Because I think so.
That one is one of the few ones I go back and forth on. My basic one, obviously, being an anarchist, I don't want any government. So when you kind of go to that, it's more of the extreme free market system.
But as an anarchist, you still want roads and bridges, and you want a sewer treatment system, and right? You want that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. And I think, I live in Michigan, so, people are like, oh, your taxes go to the roads. And I look outside and there's potholes that could eat a Prius.
Right.
Where's my taxes going?
Right. That's the problem, right? Everybody, so you agree on infrastructure spending. And I just think that healthcare is one of those things. It's like it's like grammar school, high school education. You just provide it to people. That's what that's the point of a government. You have to educate their people, make sure they have jobs, and you make sure they have health care and clean water. That's what a government, and protect us from foreign and domestic enemies. That's what a government's supposed to do. And that's why we're a failed state. Because we have a system that renders 80% of the workers living paycheck to paycheck. Half the country can't afford a $500 emergency, and 90 million people don't have health care or uninsured. That's a third of the country. This is a failed state. It can't deliver the basic services to its people. This is a failed state, and we can't even get clean water to people in Flint, Michigan. And there's lots of other places around the country we found out where there's lead in the water all over the place. They just don't
water lights on fire.
That's right. Or the water lights on fire, and they just don't talk about it in the news because the news owned by the same cabal of billionaires. There's only 15 billionaires that own all the media in the country. So again, we live in an oligarchy that media is there to manufacture consent. That's what people forget. They think when they turn on CNN or read the New York Times, that they're getting the news. The first job of the reporters of the New York Times and the hosts on CNN is to manufacture consent for the establishment. That's their job. And if they get to tell you some news along the way, so be it. But that's their number one job, and that's why they want to shut us down, because we actually do tell you what is actually going on. We actually do tell you the news, and they can't handle that. Well, listen, anything else you want to, so you still, even without healthcare, you go back and forth because you fear the tyranny of the government, but it's not the government. It's the government just paying private people to give you healthcare, just kind of like how the government pays private construction companies to build roads.
Yeah, they're awful at both of those things. That's how I view it.
Well, the most popular health insurance program in the country is Medicare. You know that? Like all the old people love it.
Yeah, and I was on that very briefly, and then I was kicked off for making $100 more than to be beneficial on it. So that was fun.
That I know. What a crazy. Well, I made the point.
Same thing with the COVID stuff, because I was a contractor before that. I'm unemployed now. I didn't receive a stimulus. I still haven't. I didn't get to receive unemployment. My business got no emergency relief because it was a single person, me, contractor business. So we just got told to get bent, have fun. No relief. I haven't even got my second. I haven't even got my first stimulus. I'm waiting on my second one to see if that ever comes out. So a year contacting the IRS, contacting the government, being like, "Hey, where's my original $600?" There's a lot of people that are in that situation right now, and the media won't talk about it.
No. It's a failed state, and so do you really fear a civil war? What would a civil war like? Who would you fight?
I would think it would go full Syria. I think the government would just collapse and you would have like 32 different factions fighting each other one day, being friends the next day, just like it was in Syria. I see things falling down because a lot of people are like, oh, it'll be Republicans versus Democrats. Well, I'm not fighting for either of those sides. You're not going to see Jimmy Dore carrying the flag of Joe Biden into battle. But there is a lot of micro factions. There's a lot of people that don't disagree. And the media has everyone so whipped up. And especially being on the ground, there's a lot of bloodlust. There's a lot of people that are like, screw this. Let's just get it over with. And that's scary. That's really scary.
How big of a group of people would you say that are ready to go?
I would say probably 20% of both political parties are like ready to fight, and probably like 30% of them are starting to, eye the gun store and thinking about it. Because you even saw what's it, John Brennan or whatever, that idiot on CNN this morning that was saying we need to investigate all of these terror groups, and he included libertarians, which are just like a bunch of weed smoking capitalists, and they included that as domestic terrorists. So we're getting towards that rapidly. And then obviously I think you're going to talk about it today, Facebook deciding that all the left-wing political groups are no longer convenient to them, so banning them today.
I tried to tell people, everywhere when I was at the Young Turks, I'm like, you push for censorship, it's going to come back. You don't know that. You don't know that. They know that, and they don't care. And people because they're on the corporate algorithm, they don't care.
Right.
But anyway, it's scary what's going on. So you think that there would be an economic collapse, or just like economic collapse, which will lead to a failure of government completely, and then it would just kind of go off to warring factions.
Yeah, everything would go to hell. We already saw it in terms of economic collapse. I've lived through 4 economic crises so far, and now I think it was like 32% of all U.S. dollars have been printed in the last couple months to go fund giving $200,000 to Syria, who we've been trying to go to war with since I've graduated high school for some reason. So yes, I definitely see.
They've definitely been trying to go to war with Syria, and now we're going to do a story about Joe Biden is sending troops back into the oil fields. I wonder why we want to go to war in Syria. Literally sending troops into the oil fields. That was the headline.
Yep. So feels like we're back in 2013. We just reset the clock and Obama's president again. We're going to start bombing Yemen or something.
But we're going to go into Venezuela. They're going to overthrow Venezuela. They're going to go put more troops back into Iraq. They're going to put more troops back into Afghanistan. They're going to go into Syria. And who else knows where else? Who knows? I bet there's a couple of more African countries they want to go into.
John McCain's ghost is going to start appearing in Eastern European countries.
Yes, yes. So, Magnus Panvidya. Vidya, did I say it right? How do you say it? Vidya. A Boogaloo boy who is anti-racist, pro-LGBT, anti-ICE detention centers, anti-war, and anti-police brutality, and pro-Black Lives Matter. Thanks for coming on the show. And please come.
One thing real quick that I wanted to say very quickly to everyone watching, if you do find someone who is an actual neo-Nazi and has Hawaiian on, send me a message on Twitter and we will find them and deal with them. Help us deal with that problem, please.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll look forward to you out there doing security at more Black Lives Matter protests.
Hopefully we won't have to, but thank you.
All right.